Simisage wins an award for being the most handsome Pokemon in Black Bolts, but nothing else. Welcome to the Tricky Gym Black Bolt and White Flare set review. That's right, I'm on the Pokemon trading card game live, and I'm going to be using their new card collection viewer to help me do this set review. And you know what? The card collection viewer looks pretty nice. All I had to do was buy the entire battle pass here, and I got the whole set completed. Lickety split. We're going to talk about the cards and their competitive viability in standard format and in Gym Leader Challenge format. Many cards will be good exclusively in standard format. Some cards will only be good in Gym Leader Challenge format, and then some cards are going to be good in both formats. Let's get right on into this thing. We're going to kick things off with Superior EX. This grass-type Pokemon has 320 hit points and the Regal Cheer ability, which says attacks used by your Pokemon do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And then it's got the Command the Grass attack for a grass and 3 colorless energy, does 150 damage, and you can search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them into your hand. Yeah, you're doing 170 damage when you Command the Grass with the Regal Cheer ability. If you've got a bunch of Superior in play, you can boost that up to 230 damage. Doesn't change the fact that this is a trash tier bulk card that is completely unplayable. So we're going to move on to the next one. This Victini is like almost worth thinking about in Gym Leader Challenge format. It does 120 damage for 2 energy and has the stipulation if you have 4 or fewer bench Pokemon, this attack does nothing. So you have to have a full bench of 5, and then V-Force can do 120 for 2. I don't think it's worth it. Even in GLC formats, there was an original Victini from Noble Victories, which I think did 100 for 2 with the same effect. And this card has just not been power crept enough over the last 15 years, unfortunately. New Volcarona has got an ability, Torrid Scales, which requires that you discard a basic fire energy from your hand, and you leave your opponent's active Pokemon burned. If you compare this to the Brute Bonnet, which only needs to have an Ancient Booster energy capsule attached to it in order to leave your opponent's active Pokemon poisoned, I think Brute Bonnet is just better by a lot. I mean, it's a basic Pokemon that has more HP than Volcarona. Volcarona is a stage 1, and poison can be boosted with the effect of Poisonous Jungle, can also be boosted with Pecharunt. So I think this Volcarona, although kind of neat, is not all that great. Even Volcanion EX does this effect better. It can leave the opponent's active Pokemon burned when it's in the active spot. Seismitoad is the new round attacker. I don't know that this attack has ever been good at any point in the game's history, but that doesn't stop the Pokemon Company from printing it. Round historically does more damage per the amount of Pokemon in play with the round attack. And as of right now, there are no other Pokemon in standard format with the round attack other than Tympole, Palpitoad, and Seismitoad. So the entire line has the round attack, but no other Pokemon. And this would be pretty nuts if there were other Pokemon in the format with the round attack, because then if you had 6 Pokemon in play with the round attack, I mean, 6 times 7, God only knows. That's like 420 damage. That's just a ton of damage, right? 6 times 7 is 42, right? So that's just a ton of damage to do with 1 Ignition Energy, which is one of the strongest cards from these sets, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Rounds, though, is going to be capped at 280 damage, which honestly is decent, but not enough to warrant building a deck around Seismitoad and the round attack. So yeah, I think that you're going to be best off just leaving this guy in your bulk bin. Are these the best water Pokemon in these sets? I'm pretty sure they are. Tortuga and Caracosta I think, are the strongest water Pokemon from Black Bolt and White Flare. Tortuga has the Ancient Seaweed attack, which does 30 damage for each item card in your opponent's discard pile. And players are making the obvious comparison between Tortuga and Garbodor from Guardians Rising. Garbodor had the Trashalanche attack, which was meta-defining during its time, and it only did 20 damage times the amount of item cards your opponent had in their discard pile for the same cost of a single energy. Ancient Seaweed is power crept for the times, which is great to see, 30 damage times the amount of items, but there are a couple of differences between Trashalanche Garbodor and this Tortuga. Trashalanche Garbodor existed in a time with Shaman EX, one of the most powerful draw cards ever printed, and Trainer's Mail, one of the most powerful item cards ever printed. So there were lots of turbo strategies that existed during Garbodor's reign in standard format. Also, there was another incredible Garbodor that existed alongside Trashalanche Garbodor with the Garbotoxin ability. So a lot of decks utilized both of those Garbodor so that you could ability lock your opponent while also punishing them for executing their strategy and playing items. The fact that Tortuga's attack power has been amplified is kind of irrelevant because now your average big Pokemon EX has just over 300 hit points, and back when Garbodor was popular, the average big Pokemon had just over 200 hit points. So they've kind of scaled the same, except back when Garbodor was being played, tool cards counted as items. So it was very easy to get tool cards and item cards stacked up in your opponent's discard pile. But now tool cards are no longer considered item cards, which does nerf the effectiveness of Tortuga. And then the final thing worth noting is that Tortuga evolves from a fossil. Fossils are a lot more difficult to get into play than basic Pokemon. Think of all the most popular cards that get basic Pokemon into play. Buddy Buddy Poffin, Nest Ball, Artisan. None of those can get Cover Fossil into play. In order to get a Cover Fossil into play, you have to play a card that searches out an item or draw into it naturally. So Tortuga is just a tough Pokemon to get into play. It's not as strong as its Garbodor counterpart was years ago, and there's no really broken ability lock Tortuga to play alongside this Tortuga. Additionally, a lot of decks are actually cutting back on the amount of items that they're playing because of Badoo and its item locking Itchy Pollen attack. And then we've also got Jellicent EX on the way with its Sea Curse ability that also locks items. You've got a lot of decks playing Brock's Scouting, and the new Hilda supporter is also going to see a lot of play. Items are kind of on the decline. Even with all of that said, the attack is still pretty good. I could see a time maybe eventually where Tortuga and the Ancient Seaweed attack is relevant, but not in the near future. Caracosta is a pretty cool Pokemon. It's got the Mighty Shell ability, which prevents all damage from and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon that have any special energy attached. So if it becomes extremely meta relevant that top decks are playing special energy, say for instance like the Lugia V-Star deck from formats past, then this Mighty Shell ability could be relevant in standard format. I don't think that it is right now, but it could be one day. I'm not going to write it off. In Gym Leader Challenge format though, this ability is quite strong, as almost every kind of deck in Gym Leader Challenge format has special energy included in it, and special energy plays a core part in many decks' strategies. And then you consider the fact that Tortuga and its Ancient Seaweed attack actually ramps up pretty well in Gym Leader Challenge format, where there are no EX Pokemon or Pokemon with a rule box allowed. So in a format with no rule box Pokemon, if your opponent just has 5 items in the discard pile, you're going to be doing 150 damage for just 1 water energy, which is really good damage output in Gym Leader Challenge format. In Standard, you're just tickling your opponent when you do 150 damage. But in GLC, you're knocking out almost everything. So this card is much stronger in Gym Leader Challenge format than it is in Standard. And even the hurdle of having to get a cover fossil into play is somewhat mitigated by the fact that you have access to Irida in Gym Leader Challenge format, which can search out an item and a water Pokemon. It's a great card for getting that cover fossil into play. So I do really like this line in a low energy count water list, a list that's not playing energy accelerators like Frostmoth or Baxcalibur. And I think Caracosta could make a splash in GLC water decks. Kyurem EX, basic water Pokemon with 230 hit points. And it's got the Blizzard Burst attack for 2 water and a colorless. Does 130 damage and 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon for each prize card your opponent has taken. So if your opponent has taken 5 prizes, then you get to do 50 damage to all of your opponent's bench Pokemon. I do not think that this card is playable or good. It's a reference to the original Kyurem Hollow with the Glaciate attack from the Black and White era, and that single prize Pokemon did 30 damage to all of the opponent's Pokemon for the same energy cost as Blizzard Burst. But in Standard format now, there are just so many better ways to spread damage onto your opponent's bench. Marnie's Grimmsnarl, Monkey Dory, Dragapult EX. It is not ever going to be worth powering up Kyurem EX to Blizzard Burst, especially since at the beginning of the game, you're only doing 10 damage to all your opponent's Pokemon. Just not worth it. It may have taken 15 years, but our boy Tynamo has finally gotten power crept. This Tynamo is the absolute apex of Tynamo evolution. Over the years, it has not only 40 HP, which is the maximum HP of any Tynamo across all of the Pokemon generations, but it also has free retreat. 15 years ago in Noble Victories, Tynamo either had 40 hit points and a retreat cost of 1, because, you know, if you have 40 hit points, then you're fat apparently, and have to pay 1 to retreat, or there was the option to play the 30 hit point Tynamo, which had free retreat. And then there have been a bunch of iterations on the 40 hit point Tynamo with a retreat cost of 1 over the years until now. Finally, the optimal Tynamo has been released in the Black Bolt set. 40 hit points and a free retreat cost. Everything you want with a Pokemon that evolves into electric with the Dynamotor ability, because Dynamotor allows you to attach a basic lightning energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon, and that combos extremely well with Tynamo having free retreat, since you can promote Tynamo with free retreat, Dynamotor to your bench Pokemon, and then retreat Tynamo into your new attacker and swing with whoever you accelerated energy to. Kind of a troll, though, gotta say. Dynamo's Hold Still attack, which heals 10 damage from this Pokemon, is a little ridiculous. I can't think of many situations where you are going to effectively use this attack to heal damage from your Dynamo, but if Dynamo were caught up in a battle with a Badoo, I guess you could glance off all of Badoo's itchy pollens while you set up your board, I guess. Now, this electric is the same exact electric that you know and love all the way back from Noble Victories. And it was the backbone of my first ever competitive deck. I've got a lot of love for electric. Back in the day, you played electric with Zekrom from Black and White, and then sometimes you played it with Mewtwo EX, you played it with Rayquaza EX, sometimes you played it with toolbox attackers like Terrakion. There were a lot of different iterations of the electric deck from the original Black and White era, and I'm excited to have this ability back in Standard. It hasn't been so long since Dynamotor has been a part of Standard format, though, because Flaffy from Evolving Skies also had the Dynamotor ability. Flaffy from Evolving Skies was largely irrelevant for most of its competitive legality, though, until Miraidon came out and really put Lightning Pokemon back on the map. Since Flaffy has rotated, Miraidon decks have found other ways to exist, and the most recent iteration of the Lightning deck is Joltik Toolbox, where you use Joltik to accelerate Lightning and Grass energy onto your Pokemon, and then amp you very much with Iron Hands, maybe swing with Pikachu EX and try to sweep up the game that way. That is a very valid way to play the Lightning deck right now, and it has been pretty successful, top-cutting multiple major tournaments. However, having the option to lean on Electric and its Dynamotor ability to charge energy into play does give Lightning decks more options and more versatility. I'm not saying that Electric is going to be the most broken part of standard format or even played in the most optimal Lightning builds right off the bat, but having this card in standard format does mean that the option is there, and maybe, like Flaffy, there will be a time when Dynamotor becomes a top strategy in the Pokemon TCG. The ability is proven. The ability is good. All it takes is the right combination of factors, and Electric could be a top deck in the Pokemon TCG. Now, Electric wouldn't be worth squat if it didn't have a great partner in this set, and thankfully, Zekrom EX is exactly that. Zekrom EX has 230 hit points, and the Voltage Burst attack for 2 lightning and a colorless energy does 130 damage plus 50 damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. So if your opponent has taken 4 prizes, you're going to do 330 damage for 3 energy. It's a basic Pokemon. It's easy to just lay down, use Dynamotor to attach energy to, and then swing for 330 damage at the end of the game. You could also use Electric Generator to accelerate lightning energy onto your Zekrom EX. It's just a very strong attack. You could even use Magneton and explode the Magneton, which would then give your opponent a prize card and boost the power of Zekrom EX's Voltage Burst while also giving you the necessary energy to use the attack. In current Lightning builds, you're relying on Pikachu EX, which caps out at 300 damage, and you can maybe play that with Gravity Mountain to decrease Stage 2 Pokemon's hit points by 30. Yeah, you know. So Zekrom EX does fill a niche there. It allows you to clear that 300 HP threshold that Pikachu can't really do, while also not requiring grass energy to do it. So I think Zekrom EX is pretty good. Even hitting 280 damage when your opponent has taken 3 prizes is super relevant, as you're going to be able to clear most of the Stage 1 Pokemon EX in standard format as well. I think Zekrom EX really breathes new life into the Miraidon archetype, right? And really makes it viable to play a Dynamotor Electric Generator based list instead of just having to go with the Joltik Iron Hands EX Pikachu list that has been popular so far. Reuniclus is one of those Stage 2 Pokemon that helps you to evolve other Pokemon into play, and I always think it's kind of funny, like you got the Stage 2 Pokemon, and then are you going to set up a Stage 2 to help evolve other Pokemon into play? It just doesn't make sense, right? If you're trying to evolve Pokemon in play, usually you want a basic Pokemon to do that, but it makes sense when you read the whole card. Cellular Ascension says for each of your bench Pokemon, you get to search your deck for a card that evolves from that Pokemon and put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it. And then Evo Lariat does 40 damage plus 40 more damage for each of your evolution Pokemon in play. And since you can have up to 8 bench Pokemon, that means that you can have 9 evolution Pokemon in play. And if you have 9 evolution Pokemon in play, that means you're going to be doing 360 plus, you're going to be doing 400 damage for 1 energy. I think I did my math right there. You'd have to have a Terra Pokemon as one of your evolutions, and you would have to have all 9 evolutions in play, and you'd have to have the stadium in play, area 0 underdepths to expand your bench to 8. This is a wombo combo. That's what it is. It's a wombo combo, and I say that as a derogative term to refer to a strategy that is too wombo-y and too combo-y to be effective. It could be funny, sure, But honestly, I think Mamoswine EX does it better. Mamoswine EX just has an ability that allows you to go search your deck for a Pokemon. It's a much more realistic way to spam Pokemon into play. And then Mamoswine EX also has more than 140 hit points, so you're not like setting up this weak stage 2 Pokemon that then is going to get easily knocked out and all that. So as far as this style of attack goes in standard format, I really prefer Mamoswine EX and the ability that Mamoswine has to set up your board. In Gym Leader Challenge format, you could ramp to some pretty decent numbers with Evo Lariat. You could even use Cellular Ascension to help set up your board. 140 hit points is still on the weak side for a stage 2 Pokemon, but if you have 3 evolution Pokemon in play, you're going to be doing 160 damage for just 1 energy. So not terrible in Gym Leader Challenge format. It's actually a pretty decent attack. And I think that there are other types that would consider playing this card. But in the Psychic card pool, you've got a lot of competition. There are some extraordinarily strong Psychic lines in Gym Leader Challenge format. Solosis and Duosion aren't really doing anything for your deck. You just have 3 deck spaces dedicated to having a pretty good low energy cost attack. And I think that there are just better uses for your deck space in GLC. However, if Reuniclus is your absolute favorite Pokemon ever, sure, it's not that bad. It's a pretty good attacker. Golly, I just love it when my Pokemon can attack on the first turn of the game, going first. Donk is back and stronger than ever, folks. Meloetta EX got 200 hit points and the debut performance ability. If you go first, this Pokemon can use attacks during your first turn. Notice it says can use attacks. Can use all attacks, not just its echoed voice attack, which does 30 damage for 1 psychic energy, and during your next turn, it does 80 more damage. So turn 1, 30, turn 2, 110, turn 3, 110, turn 4, 110. Sorry, it doesn't add 80 every single time to the previous number. It caps out at 110. I know, that'd be really exciting if it did, but it's just not the way the card works. What's interesting about Meloetta is that it can knock out Badoo turn 1 going first, but also that you can use your technical machines with it. So you could get a turn 1 TM evolution to evolve some of your bench Pokemon up into play on the first turn of the game going first. You could get a turn 1 Turbo Energize to accelerate some energy onto your Pokemon on the first turn of the game going first. And that is kind of interesting. I'm not sure that that's going to be a super popular strategy in standard format, as you're going to have to play Meloetta EX in your deck and kind of hope that you open it. But it is a kind of interesting thing that exists. And then there are also the Donk strategies. Play Meloetta with Volcanion EX, and you could have Volcanion in the active, leave your opponent's active Pokemon burned, switch into Meloetta EX, and then use TM Evolution to evolve 2 of your benched Magmar into Magmortar and make it so that your opponent takes 80 damage from burn on the first turn of the game. That's very funny. However, it's not any better than the poison version of Donk that already exists. Like, why not just do the poison thing with the Pecharunt and the Stadium? I mean, I guess, right? It seems like the same to me, but whatever, if you want to try and win games going first, Meloetta can allow you to do some of that. Excadrill EX, 270 hit points, and the piercing drill attack does 60 damage, and it also does 60 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. Rock Tumble, 200 damage for 3. This card is Bulk City. There are just better spread attacks in standard format. It's not worth getting this card into play. Conkeldurr, the Durski, has got 140 hit points and the Craftsmanship ability, which makes it so that it gets plus 40 hit points for each fighting energy attached to it. And then the Swing Around attack does 100 damage, flip 2 coins, does 50 more damage for each heads. I have never seen an ability like this that actually ends up being good. I think there's like a Stunfisk that had it, which was like kind of meme tier, funny, haha, But this Conkeldurr is like much worse than that Stunfisk was. It's a stage 2 single prize Pokemon. You could do some funny stuff if you have a reversal energy attached to it. Reversal alone is going to give you plus 120 hit points. However, you have to be losing the game in order to activate reversal energy, which you'll definitely be doing if you're playing the Conkeldurr deck. And only giving your guy 260 hit points, I mean, your opponent can easily dispose of a 260 hit point Pokemon. That's not a problem. Every deck in standard format is constructed to deal at least 300 damage. So knocking out a Pokemon with 260 hit points is not an issue. And then even if you do manage to get the Conkeldurr powered up, you're doing like 150 damage for 4 energy on average. It's just not worth it, folks. I'm sorry. Sometimes you just need to let your memes not be dreams, okay? And just let them fizzle out into the abyss and forget about them. I always think it's funny when they print these abilities. They always give Sturdy to like the worst, most unusable Pokemon. In fact, Pikachu EX, I think, is the strongest card ever printed with the Sturdy ability. And it's actually kind of ridiculous that they named it something else other than Sturdy. A real shame that they named it Resolute Heart and not Sturdy, because everybody knows Pikachu just has the Sturdy ability. Sturdy makes it so that if this Pokemon has full HP and would be knocked out by damage from an attack, it's not knocked out. Its remaining HP becomes 10 instead. Very strong. It's like a built-in ace spec. It's like a built-in survival brace, which is pretty good, right? I mean, it's literally an ace spec power level ability. But then you back it up with like one of the worst attacks you've ever seen. Stone Edge, 80 damage for 3, flip a coin if heads, 60 more. Nah, we pass. I mean, you always got to read a Pokemon when it has the Sturdy ability though, because like that ability is so good. The potential to deny one-hit KOs is extremely strong. But even in this day and age with Monkey Dory and all of the spread options available, you almost never get to use the ability anyhow. Genesect EX, one of the strongest cards in the set by a lot. It's got 220 hit points and the Metallic Signal ability, which says once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 Evolution Metal Pokemon, reveal them, and put them into your hand. This is exactly the ability that Gholdengo EX decks have been waiting for. This Genesect EX is the perfect partner for Gholdengo EX. And now Gholdengo decks can safely choose to go first, as they don't have to rely on hitting a TM evolution in order to pop off going second. You can go first, use Buddy Buddy Poffin, get your Gimme Ghoul into play, and then turn 2, get a Genesect EX, Metallic Signal, that's 2 Gholdengo right there, and then start using coin bonus to draw cards. I think Genesect EX just really smooths out the Gholdengo experience, and anyone who's a fan of the Gholdengo deck is going to love having access to Genesect EX. And Genesect isn't the only buff that Gholdengo is getting in the set. It actually also gets access to Air Balloon. Air Balloon makes it so that the Pokemon it's attached to gets -2 retreat cost, and Gholdengo has a retreat cost of 2, as does Genesect EX. And what's so cool about Air Balloon and Gholdengo decks is that it makes it so that you can promote a Gholdengo EX and use its coin bonus to draw 2 cards instead of 1, since it'll be in the active spot, and then retreat your Gholdengo into a new Gholdengo EX and then use coin bonus for 2 with that Gholdengo as well. It also just really smooths out the whole opening sequence for Gholdengo, since it used to be kind of an issue if you started a Pokemon you didn't want to open, especially if you didn't have an energy card in your opening hand, and then you were set back a turn. But now, with access to Air Balloon, you could just slap an Air Balloon on your Genesect EX or on your Monkey Dory or whatever Pokemon you happen to open so that you can get an early attack with Gholdengo EX. Air Balloon, I expect to see a lot of play. There are quite a few decks that are playing Rescue Board right now that will just swap Rescue Board straight to Air Balloon because Air Balloon is explicitly better. I don't know about you guys, but I've never actually used the bonus effect of Rescue Board. Not once ever have I actually retreated a Pokemon with, 30 hit points or less for free? Yeah. I've never actually done that. So I don't think it's actually going to matter that most decks are swapping from Rescue Board to Air Balloon, and all of those 2 retreat Pokemon that used to be a pain to play are now going to have an easy way to pivot out of the active spot. We also got a couple new supporter cards in Black Bolt, Fennel and End's Plan. Fennel allows you to heal 40 damage from each of your Pokemon, which is huge in a metagame with so much snipe damage being placed with Monkey Dory and all of that. I do think that Picnic Basket is just the superior card. It's an item and it heals your opponent's Pokemon as well, which actually ends up being a benefit against Monkey Dory decks since you heal your opponent's Pokemon, which then decreases the amount of damage that they can throw your way with Monkey Dory. So Fennel is neat, and I'm excited that a card like this exists. However, Picnic Basket is kind of the superior card in standard format right now, and I expect Picnic Basket to continue to be the tech of choice amongst top players. End's Plan allows you to move up to 2 energy from your bench Pokemon to your active Pokemon. And this card reads very similarly to Poppy. Poppy allows you to move up to 2 energy from one of your Pokemon to another one of your Pokemon. End's Plan allows you to move up to 2 energy from your benched Pokemon to your active Pokemon. So what's unique about End's Plan is that it allows you to choose energy from up to 2 different Pokemon and move them all to your active Pokemon, which can allow you to kind of concentrate your board position into your active Pokemon, which could be useful. I mean, if you have a deck that uses Dynamotor to accelerate energy to the bench, you could use End's Plan to move all of those energy to your active Pokemon, which is kind of interesting. You could have energy spread out throughout the game and then use End's Plan to move that energy to your active. I do think that this kind of supporter is generally weak. In the past, I have said things to the effect of, just put the energy where you want it the first time, right? Don't play a card like Energy Switch or End's Plan that fixes the place you put the energy. Just put it in the right spot the first time, and then you'll never have to play a card like End's Plan ever again. That's a little bit of hyperbole, but the sentiment is kind of the same. I don't really like cards like End's Plan. Just put the energy where you want it the first time around. Another callback to the original Black and White era, Prism Energy is returning. One of the stronger special energies ever. If this card is attached to a basic Pokemon, this card provides every type of energy, but provides only 1 energy at a time. So it's just a rainbow energy that doesn't have the downside of placing a damage counter on your Pokemon, but it only works on basic Pokemon. This card is going to have a big impact on standard formats, as there are a lot of decks that are playing Luminous Energy that would rather play Prism Energy instead. Something worth noting is that Luminous Energy will still be the preferred energy for Monkey Dory in evolution-based decks like Charizard or even Dragapult EX. So there are a lot of situations where Prism Energy won't work, but in basic focus decks, Prism Energy is going to be the superior option, as you can have multiple Prism Energy all attached to the same Pokemon. In the Ho-Oh EX Armor Rouge toolbox, for instance, Prism Energy is going to be very good in that deck, since you'll have the option to stack multiple Prism Energy on the same basic Pokemon to unlock attacks that the deck couldn't previously use. So Prism Energy, going to be a strong card in standard format, and I'm pretty stoked that they reprinted it. It's a cool card. Moving on to White Flare. And we got to start off with my dude, Whimsicott EX. I love Whimsicott. Whimsicott is clearly the most whimsical and wonderful Pokemon from Black and White. I will take no comments on that fact. Whimsicott EX has 230 hit points and 2 attacks. Its first attack, Energy Gift, for 1 grass, allows you to search your deck for up to 3 basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. And Wondrous Cotton, for 1 grass energy, does 50 damage times the amount of trainer cards in your opponent's hand. All in all, this card is not that great. It does have free retreat, which is nice because you could use Energy Gift to accelerate energy and then pivot into a stronger attacker after using Energy Gift. But keep in mind, Energy Gift is always existing in the context of a format with TM Turbo Energize. And TM Turbo Energize, even though it only accelerates 2 energy to your bench Pokemon, can be used by any attacker. So TM Turbo Energize is pretty much always going to be superior to Energy Gift. And then Wondrous Cotton, your opponent can just play around that by limiting the amount of trainer cards in their hand. You could do a thing where you have like Wondrous Cotton, right? And you're trying to like force your opponent to play the trainer cards out of their hand. And then you come in with the Tortuga and you punish your opponent for playing the trainer cards. It's genius. It's genius. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think this card's very good, but you know, Tortuga, Whimsicott. Another callback to the original black and white set, Emboar has returned with the Inferno Fandango ability. Says, as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic fire energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. I love this Emboar. I actually top 4 to regional once with the old Emboar from Legendary Treasures, the Family Boar, one of my favorite arts ever in the Pokemon TCG. Back in the day, you'd pair Emboar with Rayquaza EX to unleash big attacks on your opponent's Pokemon with the Inferno Fandango ability, raining fire energy into play, and then you attach lightning from hand, and then boom, Rayquaza, take a big knockouts. Previous to that, you would pair Emboar with Reshiram, which could do 120 damage with its blue flare attack. And then, of course, there was also Magnabor, which was Magnezone Prime with Emboar, and you'd accelerate energy into play, and then Lost Zone all the energy from your Magnezone, and go boom. Emboar has a history of being successful in the Pokemon TCG with this exact ability. However, I don't really think that the conditions are good for a Rain Dance style ability like this in standard format right now. Proof is that Chien-Pao Baxcalibur is pretty much unplayable right now, even though just a year ago it was a top deck in the Pokemon TCG. So it's not to say that the conditions could not come around for Emboar to be quite good. I mean, look at Baxcalibur. Baxcalibur was a regional championship winning strategy just a year ago. Fast forward 12 months and is completely unplayable. But, you know, things could change. Emboar could have its time. Its time, unfortunately, is not right now. Getting all those energy into play, getting Emboar into play, all this stuff with item lock so rampant in the format. I mean, you've got Gardevoir, which has access to Jellicent, which can item lock. You've got Badoo, which can item lock. Yeah, there's just a lot of item lock for a strategy like this to be successful. Item lock is certainly one of the things that made Baxcalibur so unplayable. That and the bench snipe of decks like Dragapult and Monkey Dory being able to really just kind of abuse placing those damage counters as well. So I don't expect Emboar to, see any play in Standard, unfortunately. And in Gym Leader Challenge, we already have an Emboar. So if you're playing Emboar in your Gym Leader Challenge deck, congratulations. It's got more HP now. As a foil to Zekrom EX, we also have Reshiram EX, also with 230 hit points, and also with the same exact attacks. Blazing Burst does 130 damage, plus 50 more for each prize card your opponent has taken. Oh, and then you have to discard an energy from this Pokemon. Zekrom does some damage to itself. Reshiram has to discard an energy. These are callbacks to the original Reshiram and Zekrom from Black and White base sets all those years ago. Very cool. Cofagrigus has got the extended Damagrigus extended Damagrigus attack. Move all damage counters from one of your bench Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Dude, people always want these kinds of attacks to be good. They always want them to be good. But your opponent can just play around this kind of stuff. As soon as your opponent knows what you're doing, any competent player is just not going to allow you to effectively utilize this kind of attack. It's the same problem I got with Cynthia's Spiritomb in the Cynthia's Garchomp deck. Like, as soon as your opponent is hip to what you're trying to do, they're not going to allow you to maximize this. It's the same thing with Wobbuffet, right, in the Rockets deck. It just doesn't end up being that good. So these kinds of attacks, they just have never really been good in the Pokemon TCG. And it's certainly not going to change now with Cofagrigus, even though it's got a very cool attack name. Gothitelle, 150 hit points, stage 2 Pokemon. The old Gothitelle from back in the day, that thing used to item lock. But we've already got a different item locker. It's Jellicent. Okay, so this Gothitelle has a different ability, but is also disruptive, distorted future. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may have your opponent shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 3 cards. And then Synchro Shot does 90 damage, plus 90 more damage if you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. There are some cards that the Pokemon Company prints, and it feels like they're printing them straight into Gym Leader Challenge format. This card, not really playable in standard format. You could, I suppose, you could set up Gothitelle with Air Balloon so that, after your opponent takes knockouts, you just kind of promote it just to use its ability and then retreat it. And if Iono does, in fact, rotate out of standard format, then maybe, maybe. I'm not saying never say never, right? Sure, I actually think the format is in a really cool place when you get to have these different, thin stage 2 lines that do things. I'm not, super hopeful that standard format is going to get to a place where you're playing, a really thin, teched out stage 2 line in order to do something schnasty, like limit your opponent to a 3-card hand. But I'm not writing it off entirely. It certainly could be a thing. This card is just pretty decent in Gym Leader Challenge format, though. You've already got the Iron Boulder, which is seeing play in a ton of Psychic decks. It's one of the strongest Psychic Pokemon printed recently. Does 170 damage for Psychic and a colorless energy if you can match hand sizes with your opponent. And then with Gothitelle, you have another tool to help you match hand sizes with your opponent. And then Synchro Shot, also a very good attack, 180 damage for 2 energy if you have matched hand sizes. And the fact that you can do 90 damage even if you don't have matched hand sizes, which is something that Iron Boulder can't do. So pretty neat card for Gym Leader Challenge format. If Standard gets to a point where there's no hand disruption, maybe, but you'll probably just find other ways to hand disrupt. Maybe just play Judge instead. I don't see the format cooling out to a point in Standard where you could actually set up a stage 2 and successfully disrupt your opponent that way. And then the big blue jellyfish, Jellicent EX. It's got the Oceanic Curse ability. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't play any item cards or Pokemon tool cards from their hand. It also has the Power Press attack for a Psychic and a colorless, does 80 damage, and if this Pokemon has at least 2 extra energy attached, it does 80 more damage, so 160 for 4. It is a very expensive attack. However, Gardevoir EX does not care about that because Gardevoir EX can accelerate as many Psychic energy from the discard pile as it wants into play every single turn, thanks to its Psychic Embrace ability. And Jellicent EX has got a retreat cost of 3, so it's not like those energy are going to get stranded on Jellicent either, as Jellicent can pretty much always retreat them off. And accelerating all those energy to Jellicent and placing the damage counters with the effect of Psychic Embrace is not even a bad thing because you can just use Monkey Dory to Adrenabrain those damage counters onto your opponent's Pokemon. And what's even better is that Frillish is not skipping out on the whole item lock fun. It's also got the Oceanic Gloom attack, which does 20 damage and makes it so your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand during their next turn. I saw this Twitter thread, which I thought was pretty insightful, from Daiichi Tamai. They said, if you're thinking of using Gardevoir at a tournament, whether you should play the Jellicent version or another variant depends on the meta that you expect. Jellicent shuts down 3 main things: Countercatcher, Rare Candy, and reusing cards from the discard pile. Jellicent is especially strong against decks that rely on these, such as straight Gardevoir and Goldengo. However, If you expect to face a lot of dark-type Pokemon like Grimmsnarl, Charizard, or Zoroark, Jellicent won't be very helpful with that. In that case, it's better to use Dex Space for big attacks like Charm plus Drifloon or techs like Espathra. I do think that Jellicent will be a popular way to play Gardevoir EX decks, but I liked that little tweet thread because it was very clear about what Jellicent is good at and what Jellicent kind of falls short of. Another old card that's gotten a fun buff, Terrakion. It's got 140 hit points and the Retaliate attack. It says if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, this attack does 80 more damage. So 130 damage for 2 energy. The old Terrakion did 90 damage when a Pokemon was knocked out, which was enough to knock out the biggest, baddest darkness Pokemon at the time, Darkrai EX. This Terrakion isn't going to be knocking out squat with Retaliate. I'm going to be honest. So I'm not very impressed. But in Gym Leader Challenge format, this is actually a substantial upgrade, as 130 damage is going to be knocking out quite a few things. So this card could see some play in GLC format. New Zoroark is here. It's got 120 hit points and both the Mind Jack and Foul Play attacks. Now, Mind Jack and Foul Play are both attacks that have been on Zoroark's past. Good ones. But they have never both been featured on the same card until now. Now, this Mind Jack attack is a little bit less powerful than the one from Breakthrough. However, it does cost less energy, so we forgive that. It's only 10 damage less than the Zoroark from the X and Y era. It does 30 damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So if your opponent has a full bench, that's 150 damage for just 1 energy. And then Foul Play allows you to choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. It does cost 3 colorless energy, which is more than the original Zoroark from Black and White base set, which could Foul Play for just 2 colorless energy. However, we've got Ignition energy now. So I suspect that that's what the game designers had in mind when printing this attack. This Zoroark is a pretty decent Stage 1 Pokemon, and I expected to see play in Darkness-type Gym Leader Challenge decks. I've even thought quite extensively about some sort of Stage 1 Toolbox deck in Standard format. However, I don't think that the time is right in Standard for a Stage 1 Toolbox style deck. I mean, you could have a deck that relies on Luminous energy and plays like Zoroark and Caracosta and stuff like that, but ultimately these Pokemon just aren't really doing enough to combat the big bad Pokemon of Standard right now. Your Stage 2 Pokemon EX with over 300 hit points, it's not really strong enough to be able to compete with those top decks, I don't think. Mandibuzz is kind of interesting. It's got the Look for Prey ability. Once during your turn, you can use this ability. Your opponent reveals their hand, and you can put a basic Pokemon with 70 hit points or less that you find there onto your opponent's bench. If you're playing some sort of spread-oriented strategy where you're trying to pick off little Pokemon on your opponent's bench, this could be good. But is it worth setting up to do all of that? Probably not, right? Probably not. I don't really think it's going to be worth it, but it's at least interesting. It's worth thinking about. This Purrloin could be the new optimal Purrloin in Gym Leader Challenge format. It's got a great attack, Invite Evil. Search your deck for up to 3 dark Pokemon and put them into your hand. Very strong. It does come at the cost of this Purrloin only having 60 hit points though, which means that it can be chased down early by Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt can do 60 damage to a bench Pokemon for just 1 double dragon energy. And Purrloin is your most important basic that evolves in the Dark GLC deck since it evolves into Liepard, which is the deck's consistency engine. So this is a strong attack. However, it comes at the cost of Purrloin only having 60 hit points. So I could definitely see quite a few Dark decks choosing to play this Purrloin. But I could also see quite a few decks kind of fearing the potential of Raging Bolt and opting for a 70 hit point Purrloin instead. Hydreigon EX. 330 hit points, stage 2 Pokemon with the Greedy Eater ability. If your opponent's basic Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack used by this Pokemon, take one more prize card. Oh my goodness. If only it had a good usable attack. Dark Bite. 200 damage for the low cost of 3 darkness energy and 2 colorless energy. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. 5 energy to do 200 damage. Is it worth it? No, of course not. Of course it's not worth it. It's too much energy. Bouffalant EX, 220 HP. The Boofer ability makes it so that Bouffalant takes 30 less damage from attacks. And then Goldbreaker does 100 damage. And if it's up against a Pokemon EX, does 100 more damage. More like Bouffalant EX. Am I right? Brave Bengal makes it so that if the Pokemon this card is attached to doesn't have a rule box, the attacks it uses do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. So that's good, and will allow single prize Pokemon to trade a little bit better with Pokemon EX. It's very evident that rule box Pokemon like Pokemon EX have been getting buffed at a higher rate than their single prize counterparts over the years. And Brave Bengal honestly only allows those single prize Pokemon to do 30 more damage to Pokemon EX, which is something that was printed forever ago. Silver Bengal was printed in 2013, Plasma Blast, and it gave the same buff to single prize Pokemon back then. So now 12 years later, we've got Brave Bengal, which gives single prize Pokemon the same buff that they were given 12 years ago. But if you were to put like the strength of multi-prize Pokemon on a graph compared to their single prize counterparts, like the graph would be like this. Okay, the graph, yeah, the multi-prize Pokemon have improved at a rate like this, while the single prize Pokemon have improved at a much more mellow rate. So as that gulf has kind of widened over the years, the buff that the single prize Pokemon has remained the same. It's kind of like how the cost of living has inflated dramatically over the years in the United States, but the minimum wage has stayed the exact same. It's kind of like that. As a data analyst, the backwards graph bothers me. Well, to me, the graph was done correctly, but to you guys at home, it's backward. Like, I understand. To me, this is backwards, right? Because we're mirrored. Do you see? Hilda looks like it's going to be a great new supporter card. Allows you to search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and an energy card and put them into your hands. So just a great versatile card, can help you to search out evolution Pokemon while also getting a necessary energy that you need from your deck in order to power up your Pokemon. There's already a lot of tutoring style supporters that are seeing play in Standard right now, like Brock Scouting and Jacques, and Hilda is going to go perfect in a lot of decks. Imagine being able to play Hilda in your Dragapult EX deck to go get Dracloak while also getting the necessary energy that you need to be able to attack. Similarly, you could go search out Dragapult EX and the energy that you need to be able to attack. You could go get Neo Upper Energy and a Dragapult EX. You could go get Gardevoir EX and a Darkness Energy that you need to attach to Monkey Dory. You could go get a Charizard EX and, you guessed it, the Darkness Energy that you need to attach to Monkey Dory. You could also go and get any sort of cool evolution Pokemon that you want and the brand new Ignition Energy, right? Which is a strong new special energy card from White Flare, which provides a single colorless energy, unless it's attached to an evolution Pokemon, in which case it provides 3 colorless energy instead. The energy only lasts for a single turn and it gets discarded. But Ignition Energy can allow you to instantly power up an attack on an evolved Pokemon that you otherwise would not have access to. So a pretty strong card. It's going to make certain attacks usable that would otherwise be too difficult to power up right away. I mean, kind of thinking about Zoroark's Foul Play attack. That Foul Play attack's pretty tough to power up, but with Ignition Energy, very easy. And since Zoroark is a single prize Pokemon, you don't really care that the energy is getting discarded because, let's be honest, you're never expecting a Pokemon with 120 hit points to live in the active spot for more than a single turn. Anyways, more often than not, it's going to get knocked out. So the energy getting discarded at the end of the turn, really good for single prize decks and single prize Pokemon like that Zoroark, but this Ignition Energy can work on multi-prize Pokemon like Pokemon EX as well. So I do expect Ignition Energy to see some play. Notably, it is a strict upgrade on Triple Acceleration Energy since Ignition Energy can be attached to a basic Pokemon. So you could do something like attach Ignition Energy to a basic Pokemon, play Professor's Research, evolve that basic Pokemon, and then activate Ignition Energy's 3 colorless energy effect. With Triple Acceleration Energy, it literally could not be attached to a non-evolution Pokemon. So Ignition Energy is a bit stronger than Triple Acceleration Energy from formats past. And all in all, there's some pretty cool... Oh, yeah. Dang, I almost forgot about Tool Scrapper. Tool Scrapper's back, too. Holy smokes. We've got some tool removal returning to standard format. Tool Scrapper. Choose up to 2 Pokemon tools attached to Pokemon, yours or your opponent's, and discard them. Tool Scrapper going to be a welcome addition to standard format, like Lost Vacuum before it, and Field Blower before that, and Startling Megaphone before that, and Tool Scrapper before that. Having item cards that remove tool cards, it's kind of a classic function in the Pokemon TCG, and Tool Scrapper is returning in White Flare, so means you're going to have an option to remove those annoying tools from your opponent's Pokemon if you wish. Yeah, so that about does it for the review of Black Bolt and White Flare. Let me know in the comments below which Black Bolt and White Flare cards you are most looking forward to building your own decks around. Thank you so much for watching the video, and make sure to check out the sponsors, FullGripGames.com for all the best Pokemon trading card game singles and sealed product, as well as DragonShield.com for all the best sleeves and accessories. You can use code TrickyJim at DragonShield.com for 5% off your order. Shopping at FullGripGames.com and DragonShield.com directly support the content that I create here on Tricky Jim. Thank you so much for watching. Y'all take it easy and have a great day. See ya.